Hello, and welcome to episode 13 of the Motivational Millennial podcast. Before I introduce our guest for today, Blake and I have a couple of announcements to share. The first is that today, August 16th, I begin the certification program with the Coaches Training Institute, and I'm looking for a few additional clients to work with. It's going to be a lot of fun because over the next 6 months, I will be steeped in coactive skills, and I would absolutely love to help you achieve your goals and be very appreciative of your support as I go through the certification process. If you are interested, please reach out at ivy@motivationalmillennial.com, or you can hit me up on Facebook as well at iLaclaire, LACLAIR. Blake, share your announcement, please.
Thanks, Ivy. Super excited about your certification process. That's really awesome. So, at the date this is airing, August 16th, we are 4 days away from a TEDx talk that I'm going to be giving at TEDx Hickory in North Carolina. Woo-hoo. If you hear a slight sound of stress in my voice, that's because it's still undergoing a few minor tweaks as we near the completion deadline here, but that's okay. But it should be really fun, and looking forward to sharing it with you when it's released.
Yay! Look forward to watching it. So today's guest is Lindsey Frischer. She joins us at a really interesting time in her life after a couple of big transitions, and as a result is able to bring some amazing insight and wisdom and share that with us. So stay tuned and listen to the after show when Blake and I will share our biggest takeaways.
Let's do it.
Hello, and welcome to the Motivational Millennial podcast, where we talk with inspiring members of the millennial generation who are living life with a sense of purpose and achieving their dreams. I'm Ivy LeClaire.
And I'm Blake Brandis.
Our Motivational Millennial guest today is Lindsey Frischer. After practicing law in New York City for an international law firm for nearly 5 years, Lindsey left the practice and her home to explore the world. When she resettled in Oakland, California, she was committed to immersing herself in the community and supporting social enterprise. She has since been working as a business development consultant for 2 mission-driven startups, Josephine and Creatives Without Borders, and a nonprofit, Bay Area Green Tours. Thank you so much for being here with us, Lindsey.
Yeah, guys, thanks for having me.
Yeah, and it's fun because you're here in person with us.
I am. I'm looking right at your beautiful face.
Yeah, that's part of the fun of it. Awesome. So just start out by telling us what you're up to now and why you're passionate about it.
Sure, absolutely. So, as you mentioned, right now I am doing a bit of consulting. I am splitting my time between 2 social enterprises, as you mentioned, Josephine and Creatives Without Borders, as well as working about 20 hours a week with a local nonprofit called Bay Area Green Tours. They're each providing a very different service from each other, but for me that's been the most exciting aspect of it as I sort of transition into this new field, which I'm calling business development as the umbrella for the numerous things that I'm immersed in.
Yeah.
So, for example, with the nonprofit at Bay Area Green Tours, that was my introduction to the Bay Area. I moved from New York, and I knew nothing about Oakland. You know, San Francisco, I'd been a few times. I have family a little bit south in the peninsula. But when I moved to Oakland, I really knew no one, and I knew nothing of what I was getting into. I was sort of drawn to the Bay Area by its proximity to nature, the opportunity for a little bit of space for myself, for personal growth, away from friends and family in sort of the urban jungle that we come to call New York. So with Bay Area Green Tours, I jumped right in as a full-time volunteer. They were about to launch a Indiegogo campaign, which is a crowdfunding campaign. And I had zero experience in doing that, but the executive director was sort of desperate for some managerial help, and so I took on that responsibility. And for me, I mean, it couldn't have worked out better, because it was such an introduction to the community. We are organizing educational events to highlight the sustainable progress in the area. So it's an environmentally focused organization, but instead of the doom and gloom that is what we hear in the news about what's happening with our environment, we are turning the spotlight on the positive change makers. So the campaign was to raise funds for a youth program to get them out of the classroom and into the field. So that was my introduction, and from there, I mean, I loved what they were doing, I loved the connections I was making, and then they brought me on as the business development and sales director. So I've been doing that. And as I got comfortable in the community, I started to really reach out to other, social enterprises and change makers as I was introducing them to our participants on our experiences and tours. So, which led me to meet Josephine. And Josephine is this incredible team of, I would say, youthful startups, which is another impressive thing that I'm finding in the Bay Area. And they are working to build a marketplace so that cooks could prepare meals out of their homes and sell them to their neighbors. There's a few examples like this that exist, but mostly focused on dining in together, so sort of like a supper club. But what we're doing here is we're really trying to create a more inclusive food system. And so one of the things that I'm doing with Josephine as a consultant is policy advocacy, which has been extremely interesting. We're basically seeking to reform the California Retail Food Code, which is no small feat. And it's, and it has taken a lot of time and energies, and it's by no means happening tomorrow, but I do feel really confident in where we're going and the progress we've made. And then I might as well explain the third enterprise since I feel remiss if I don't. Creatives Without Borders is another fantastic social enterprise we're looking to incorporate as a nonprofit. The co-founders are based in New York, so I'm working remotely, but one of them's a very dear friend of mine, and his partner I've also become really close with. So it's sort of like working, with your best friends. And with that organization, we're seeking to connect nonprofits with creative resources. So the creative end is any thinkers, designers, makers that are willing to offer pro bono services to nonprofits. And we're focusing on really impactful projects and then broadcasting them as widely as possible. And that's where I am right now.
That's great. What are you finding is the thing that you like the most about working with social enterprise?
It's a great question because I am constantly reminded of what it is exactly that's motivating me to keep doing this. Mm-hmm. And it's the continuous progress that I see happening in the private sector. Nonprofits are one thing, and I'm really excited to be engaged with them. Mm-hmm. But the idea that we can affect such positive change quickly through social enterprise, I think for me is really eye-opening. And something that varies a little bit from my more conventional legal background, working at a corporate firm, understanding that the corporations and companies that we represented, Fortune 500 companies, some of the larger institutional banks, things got done at a very high level that the impact was, I think, non-existent to those people that worked there. And I had a really tough time personally connecting, with the work that I was doing. And so with the social enterprises, not only the degree of collaboration that exists within the organizations that I'm working with, but just the immediate impact that you feel is happening, day to day, and the lives that are potentially, changing. For me, that's everything, and that's completely rewarding.
Can you take us back to that decision point when you decided to leave the law world and jump into social enterprise? What was that process like for you, making that decision?
Sure, and I would like to say it was impulsive, but it wasn't. It was a process. And I encourage people to really look deep into that, that sort of little voice in your head, as it was for me, kind of every day creeping in a little bit more and a little bit more, certainly weighing the pros and cons of, the decision of leaving this sort of cush job, by no means easy, but definitely a nice setup. And I think I saw my life, 8-10 years down the road, and that scared the heck out of me. And that's me personally, and that's where I was in my life. But the decision sort of came, I think it was kind of twofold. I was definitely getting to a point, I had just turned 30, and I was born and raised in New York, and I had left to go to law school in DC. And I always knew I'm going to return to New York, and I'm going to start my career there. And so, and I did just that, and it was exciting for those first few years living the high life in New York City, in my mid-20s. But like I said, I reached that point where I kind of took this step back, and I saw myself down the road, basically gauged off of the more senior associates that I was working with at the time, and recognizing that they were miserable, but more than that, they were still there, right? And I think that that's the problem. I think we don't take enough time to really reflect on what it is that we want, out of our own lives, what it is that motivates us or moves us. Certainly, I think the conventional approach from education to work is pretty linear. And I have zero regrets, although I think some time and space away from having to make one decision after the next in terms of deciding these sort of bigger picture plans for myself was necessary. So the decision in that respect was becoming much more apparent as I was realizing I wasn't doing fulfilling work. This could be my life in 5-10 years from now, and what would I have to show for it? Would this really be my life's purpose? And then I think the other part of it was much more personal in the sense that there was the shift in my family life, and my father's prognosis took a turn, and I realized that the fragileness and the finite amount of time that we have, and what is it that we really want to take away from all of this. And so the two overlapped. I was ready to leave, and then I had another reason to leave and sort of take care of my family and be around and be supportive. So those two kind of, for me, was all I needed to take that leap.
So what did you do after you took the leap?
I got drunk.
What happened? Yeah. Step one. What's going on with life?
Well, right. I mean, I think I set myself up for exactly what I wanted, uncertainty. I had no real plans after that point, but to know that I was freeing myself up in some real way. So I gave up my apartment. I gave up my job. I did move home to help out with my family. And after my father passed, I stuck around for a little while, and then I went traveling. Like any good sojourn in need of some discovery. And I definitely set out. I had to cancel some travel plans prior to that, just because, again, with this sort of prognosis and not knowing, and there was again, a whole degree of uncertainty around my life at this point. But also this, hint of excitement, because while everything was really upside down and inside out, that meant anything could happen. And I was really getting a high on that. So I went abroad. I went to Southeast Asia. I enrolled in a yoga teacher training. I immersed myself in my practice. And for me, it was never about becoming a teacher necessarily, although who knows what's, down the road. But definitely working on my own practice, spending time, discovering who I am and what works and what doesn't inside. And I think that was also the motivation for moving out west once it was time to return home, because I think I was thriving in that space, in that, not the alone time, but just that space away from the things that were so familiar, and that's okay, right? As much as I miss my friends and family and my setup, it was so liberating to say, okay, I have this great world over there. How privileged, how lucky am I? But let me take monster leaps and steps away and see what is there within me that I wasn't finding there, that I knew was there, just sort of latent, and give that a chance to rear its head. It was a creative awakening for the most part.
Yeah, what did you find?
I think the discovery was, a tremendous amount, I'd say. For me, traveling abroad was a great opportunity for perspective, right? So you're away, you're exploring other cultures, and I don't think this is unique to me. And you're abroad, and not only are you in these new environments that are, you're a stranger in a new environment, and I'm also surrounded by strangers in this new environment. But I thrive on human connection, and for me, that was so inviting. I was putting myself out there and meeting tons of new people. I was learning about myself tremendously through that process of just being so vulnerable and engaged with the then and there. I was very focused on the moment, and that's something that yoga really helps to harness in our practice. And really doing things with intention for the first time, making thoughtful decisions, not casting, my line out so far, but really just saying, okay, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this with all I've got. So whether that was, like I said, going through the 200 hours, and then my friend and I, who I had just met, we decided we were going to go to Lombok and we were going to hike up Mount Rinjani. And that was just a day's decision. And the next day, here we are doing this 3 overnight backpack up this volcano. That was a tremendous effort, but doing it with smiles on our face, and doing it because we set ourselves up for this and we were going to accomplish it. And so I've got this new friend now. I've got this incredible experience that I'm living in. Yeah, so perspective for sure, and being away and sort of living with the backpack and knowing how we just need so little to really get by. And then also just that proximity to people again. And don't get me wrong, like I keep mentioning, and it's not for no reason, I have this incredible network at home. But for me, it is about the human connection. And I will never, if there's anything that's of great value to me in this world, it's that we all have the opportunity to meet each other and to learn from each other and grow. And I think that we also have the same ability to impart so much support for one another. So being abroad and getting to know new people and new cultures, I think was just, it resonated. Like, this is something that made me feel like I was sort of one step closer to my purpose.
After that trip, was there one moment that sticks out in your mind as a defining moment to find that sense of purpose?
Oh, I failed to mention that through this process, I was also introduced to a life coach. And this was something that was sort of way left field a year, 2 years earlier, right? In my mind, this was not an option, and I wasn't thinking about that. But I had gotten this recommendation from another yogi I was practicing with, and this wonderful woman who's on the other side of the world in Australia works with women in similar positions, you know, entering into this practice, but also figuring out their dharma or their life's purpose. And I got in touch with her, and I think that was the ultimate transition point for me, with taking all the things that I was harnessing and practicing, and then bouncing them off her and getting her feedback and her encouragement. I think it gave me a lot of personal strength to keep going, right? And that's something we always say, keep going. Because as hard as it is, or as challenging as it is, keep going. So I would say that sort of solidified my decisions. As far as identifying my purpose, I mean, like I said, I think I knew then and there that I was on a path, I was on a journey, and I wasn't about to just return home to reestablish myself from the exact life that I intentionally left. Yeah. So I think the tipping point was moving to Oakland and saying, I'm going to give it a go, with little to nothing here to support that endeavor but myself and the one or two connections I had, and continue down that path of exploring. And that is exactly what I'm doing today. I'm one step closer to finding my purpose, but I feel like I am definitely on the right path.
I loved what you said a little bit ago about climbing the volcano, and how you said it was extremely, I'm paraphrasing, but you said it was extremely challenging, that you were doing it with smiles on your face. Mm-hmm. That is the summary of your journey right now that I'm hearing, is that there was so much challenge and uncertainty, but that you're like, this is the uncertainty that I wanted. Right. And you have a smile on your face right now and you're talking about it.
Because it's great. I think you're absolutely right. I think it highlights my existence right now. I take a lot of comfort in the uncertainty. And that's shifting, you know, for sure. I think I'm getting to a place where I'm more inclined to want to settle a little bit, like, you know, with exclamation mark or quotation marks. Yeah. But I think that's exactly it. I think that for me, there's so much that can be derived from every little decision that we make. And instead of saying, this is what I want to be in 5 years, right now for me, it's like, it's just enough to know that I'm going to start this new adventure out, and I don't know where it's going to take me. And that's what's so awesome about it. And that's where I'm going to learn and grow and thrive, and then reflect back, or, you know, not even, although I encourage reflection at all points, but before even necessarily having to, another door opens that you definitely didn't anticipate, or you couldn't have anticipated. So that's sort of been my journey. And so walking up that mountain was a huge challenge, but it was also like exactly what I was hoping for, because it's in those moments where we really, I think in those challenging moments where we really, our character comes out, and it's who we are, and you can make a decision. Should I give up? Should I keep going? You know, should I throw my pack on my friend? And like, what is it that you're going to choose to do in these indecisive moments? And I think that's a lot. That's where we're learning and growing continuously.
I was wondering if you could talk a little bit more about the coaching practice that you mentioned going through, and some of our listeners are probably familiar with coaching, some not so much. It sounds like it was something that for you didn't even seem like it was on your radar, but sounds like it was really impactful. Could you talk a little bit about what coaching has been like for you? And
Absolutely, and I'm sure it varies across the board for each person. Again, my coach is across the world, so we've never met face to face, which is huge considering the amount I've shared and just the complete safety I felt in our relationship. So for me, it was very organic, and I think that that's what she strives for, obviously. But even in our initial conversation, I think there's some sort of ability to detect energy that I knew that she was looking for if there was a match between us. And fortunately there was, and for me as well. And I think it has to work both ways. And I have never actually partook in therapy, but I have to think that this is very close to it, because you are confiding in somebody, and that to me was the most challenging aspect of it. I mean, I can't really say this without smiling because I'm on the radio now talking to you guys, but like it is very difficult for me to talk about myself, which is, it's true. And usually when you're engaged in a conversation with a friend, there's biases built in, you know, you're listening and you're talking, but you know, that other person might expect something from you or vice versa. With my coach, I, for the first time, was able to sort of let go of feeling guilty about, you know, hogging the conversation or monopolizing the conversation, and just go deep into what it was that was motivating me or plaguing me. And the topics, they varied, but they tended to lean towards our professional choices. And certainly that's what I was seeking. You know, when we say life's purpose, it's both personal and professional, I think. And if we could find the union between the two, then I think we've made it. And for me, I think that was her goal as well. So the challenge was being able to let go and let myself speak freely and openly, and really found some interesting things there. And her questions, like, were so pointed and so on point, you know, and definitely I could tell that she was not only listening, but she was analyzing and was able to, you know, to process some really helpful feedback in a very respectful way. Like, once I kind of said what I needed to say, it wasn't an interruption, and it wasn't like, our time here is up. It was very, despite being on the phone, it was super natural and organic. Yeah, so, and I recommend that, even if you don't get anything else out of it but the opportunity to share and let go. And sometimes that has to be oral and it has to be real. There's only so much we can do internally by ourselves alone.
How do you think that having the opportunity with her to share and let go has affected your life overall?
I think she gave me an additional layer of confidence that I didn't necessarily have before that. You know, everything that I indicated to her that I was concerned about or trepidatious about, or, yeah, just that uncertainty, you know, and that's okay. She, like, encouraged me to live in that. So I think that the growth for me was just owning it, and not, instead of judging myself for it, owning it and being okay with that. And I didn't walk away having it all figured out by the end of our time together. But I certainly felt like she made me feel like I was on the right path, and now I really felt like I was on the right path. So keep going, right? And it's funny because I just got an email from her this morning, and I don't think we've connected in 6 months. So it's just really nice timing. Yeah, I feel like she must have sensed I was doing some inner thing. I mentioned to you guys I was thinking about this conversation this morning and doing some reflection, and I have a feeling she just, you know, she picked up on that.
I love that.
Just take a moment and enjoy that.
What I want to say is that I really appreciate that you're here, especially given that you're saying, you know, it's challenging for me to talk about myself, because there's a lot of wisdom here that you're sharing, and it's a huge gift that you're here with us right now, and I'm really enjoying myself.
I appreciate that, Ivy. And I know that you had mentioned to me in another conversation that you're pursuing a similar path in coaching.
Yes.
Right. So, you know, and no, but and that's why I'm convinced that it's different for each person. But what you are setting yourself up to do has so much potential good, and I think a really nice alternative to what we think of as conventional, you know, therapy and treatment.
Yeah, it's really wonderful to hear you speaking about your experience with coaching, because I'll be starting certification, a 6-month certification process to be a coach in the coactive model. And I believe so sincerely in its ability to help people. I know that it has helped me, and so I love hearing the story about just how valuable it is to listen, to be present, to validate. And so it's putting some new wind in my sails just listening to you and your journey and how it's affected you. For
Wonderful.
sure.
I'm glad and I think she would be glad too to know that, that it's encouraging others to pursue this.
Well, I hope that you share this with her.
I will.
Lindsey, since you started on this journey, you've shared a couple of the challenges that you've experienced so far, but is there one that sticks out in your mind as a challenge that you overcame along the way?
I think, we talked about this, so I don't want to be redundant, and without being too vague, I honestly think that I'm in one of the most challenging times right now. I mean, it is one thing to have a very real thing happen, trauma or accident or, something sort of concrete, and be able to say that was a major trauma or challenge rather. But for me right now, I'm living in this sort of very challenging period where I'm going forward and I'm not exactly sure what I'm doing. And again, while that proves to be a really exciting place to live in, it is also, holy cow, it is super challenging not to no longer be on the conventional approach or, that path that was so neatly, set out in front of you. So I'm sorry to be a little vague about it, but I think the very real challenges are now, and, to overcome those is a day-to-day feat. And I love that as well, because I can have a day where I'm feeling super discouraged or intimidated or even somewhat regretful, although that's not my nature, and I can get myself through it within a day. And, not alone, certainly with the comfort of friends and family and loved ones, but also just because I'm proving that this path I'm on is validated in so many ways. And so it could be going into a meeting, feeling kind of discouraged about something and stepping out and being like, okay, I just spoke to X, Y, and Z about this and it was super helpful and I love what I'm doing in this moment. So, the challenges, they're everywhere for me, and defining my career right now in this transition has been that challenge. And as I'm saying this, I could elaborate a little bit on what I mean in terms of, I think personally, I am struggling to define who I am. And I don't know that I need to or that I necessarily want to, but it does come up as you put yourself out there professionally, right? A former lawyer, and now I'm a business development consultant, but like leveraging what I was to what I am now and really trying to personify what it is that I can offer has been a really interesting challenge for me.
That's so interesting to think of. Not only you're creating right now your path as you go and what your roles look like, but the idea that your identity can be in flux as well, because we as a culture have a very clear idea of what we think of when we think of a lawyer and identity as a lawyer. So you have a little bit of help like when you're starting that to kind of frame your identity in that role, or doctor, or
right,
many other roles that seem to like teacher that are more defined. But in this position where you're creating something new and you're adding value in all these different ways to these different places, it's like, how does that form my identity? That's such an amazing way to think about it.
It is, yeah. And you're right. I mean, you nailed it on the head. Like, to identify as a lawyer is a very easy thing to do because, yes, I am a licensed attorney in New York. And so right there, you have this whole set of expectations or ideas of what that means as to who I am. But I am now entering this new zone of redefining myself, and it's very little to do with me being a lawyer, although I'm happy to say that I bring a lot of that skill set into what I'm doing. Yeah, so that's a very unique challenge, and it's also the point of life, right? Like continuing to go on and form our identities and test those against things, but continuously questioning, is this me? I think, at one point I had my own personal mantra, and that was, it was simple. It was to be the best version of me. Right? And whatever that means. But I think for each of us, it's different. And I'm in pursuit of that. And I know when I'm not being the best version of me. Right? And I know more times than not how I can make a decision that will reflect being the better version of me. So, yeah, I mean, that's in essence what I'm trying to do and what I struggle with.
That's a great question to ask in any given situation, I think, too. How can I be the best version of me in this situation? Because there are always options on how to respond in any given life event or just even work situation or personal challenge. So I really like that a lot.
Yeah, and not to be so selfish in our decision making, as it is to play out on other people, but I think that encompasses it, right? So the best version of me is going to do something that benefits more than it hurts, right? And not just myself, but those around me. And generally speaking, that's what I shape my decisions around, and hopefully most people do as well. Yeah, it's interesting. And it stems from, I can't tell you exactly what it was that I had done wrong. I just remember you know what it was? I was traveling and I lost my passport. I was in Amsterdam. And I call home, and I was on a work trip. So we took a work hiatus from our firm's office in London to go to Amsterdam. And I lost my passport in Amsterdam, as you do. And I remember my colleagues had to return to the office, and I had to stay at least one night to try to get a temporary or reclaim it or something. And I remember phoning home, and I told my dad, and the only thing he could say was, do better, right? And all right, and it's harsh, but it was like, it's an ongoing joke now with me and my friends, like whenever we do something silly, like just do better, as if it were that easy. But I think that sort of, kicked off this idea that I want to do better always. I want to be the best version of me. Thanks for the not a motivation, Dad, but yeah, so do better.
To me, what I hear is there is a possibility to do better now. It's like, I always think of, well, I learned, I'm going to do better next time. Like, it's knowing that in the moment. Like, for me, knowing that I'm doing the best that I can in the moment makes me feel really good. And then if there's failure, which naturally there will be when you put yourself out there and you try, then you go, do better. I'll do better next time.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, that's all it is anyway, right?
Yeah.
It's learning from our mistakes for sure and embracing them. And, we're guaranteed to make more. But day in and day out, if we're putting our, our best foot forward and we're giving it that old college try, and it's okay to mess up. It's okay to lose your passport. Or your wallet or your license. I mean, it happens.
So in addition to do better, is there any advice that you might be able to share with millennials who are on a similar path of self-discovery?
I mean, I feel like this has all been my musings on that. And now I'm 33, and I think I'm on the cusp of that millennial definition in terms of age. But I think that there's so much more opportunity now for millennials to take unconventional paths and redefine or define for the first time their identities, and not let it be molded to somebody else's expectations or institutional expectations. So I would encourage anybody who's questioning their path to question it and dive deep in that. And no decision's irreversible. And if you could just muster up the courage to explore a little bit in what it is that drives you and gets you excited every day or on occasion, but still explore it. I would say that. And for me, it took a while to get there. And, 30 is conventionally maybe a little bit late in the game to reimagine, but then again, not really. And so I don't regret a minute of it. So I would say, just pursue your curiosities and shape your identity.
Well, I feel really grateful to be a part of this time in your journey, because in so many ways you have achieved so much in taking the time to really look at your life and reflect and say, is this what I really want? Making those decisions, doing what you need to do. And now you're here in this incredibly supple, beautiful place and time, which is really cool, full of opportunity. And I wonder, now that you're in this place and you're out in Oakland and discovering all these things about yourself, what would you say to Lindsey still at the law firm years ago?
With a vote of confidence, I would just say you're on your path. And that's really it, because we all have our respective paths in life. I needed to go through that to get to where I am today. So again, no regrets. And I would just say, enjoy this now, right? Because I think there was that period of time where I was becoming very anxious. I was getting these ocular migraines. I was really physically manifesting a lot of stress in not being happy in where I was. And I would say to myself now, just enjoy this. You are on your path. This will get you to the next place you're supposed to be, and be in that moment, and it's okay.
Each step that you've taken, becoming a lawyer, doing the traveling, all of that, has made you the absolute perfect person to be in the roles that you are in now. Because you have this passion, you have this drive, you have this experience, and you wouldn't have known to tell yourself that at the time, like someday, but that's what you're saying with the path.
Right.
Like each step, as you go along, in retrospect, you go, this totally makes so much sense.
Absolutely, and thank you for saying that. And I agree. I mean, I'm certain I'm not quite where I'm going to be.
Right, we're never done.
But I'm very much
never done.
I'm very much here in this moment feeling validated that what I've done in the past has brought me here. And, another huge takeaway from my experiences abroad and immersing in my practice was that the universe provides. And without being too spiritual about it, I find that if we sort of set our intentions and we put our inner desires out there, that the universe will answer. It will always give you what you need, even if you don't know that that's what you needed. So another pearl, if you will, is just, look around and be overly aware of where you are, and don't take it for granted, because for one reason or another, you're exactly where you're supposed to be. And there are things that are around you that are meant to be there for you. So, and I take comfort in that. So if I'm having one of those challenging days where I'm questioning a lot of things, it's a really good practice to do and be able to say, but maybe it's a gratitude practice, whatever it is, but looking around you and saying, okay, but holy cow, I put myself in this position and I was able to obtain that. Or this person whom I didn't know a month ago is now in my life. There's a reason for that. So I take great comfort in that.
So you talked about a gratitude practice, and I'm wondering if you have any practices in the morning that you do just to set yourself up for having an awesome day.
Mornings, I'm glad you said mornings, because I'm certain it could happen at any point in the day. But for me, mornings are my most productive times, and also I think the opportune time to really set the stage for your day, obviously, right? And I'm not so faithful to my practice anymore, and that's okay. I'm not judging myself for that, and I'll get back into it again. But I always try to do one positive thing for myself in the morning. So if it's a run, or if it's a bout of gratitude, or a long walk with my dog, like if everything else goes awry that day, I had done that already. And so how great is that, to set yourself up for the rest of taking on all of the challenges that are certain to come your way and the stresses that are just day to day. Yeah, so there's nothing one thing that I do consistently, but I really try ideally to do one positive thing like that. And usually for me it's physical activity.
So one final sort of exploratory question is, you talked a little bit earlier about millennials and the ability millennials have to create this new identity, but how else do you feel like being a millennial has affected what you want out of life, your trajectory, that sort of thing?
Sure, and I think this is probably much more of a practical response, because I think we're in this extremely exciting time right now in human connectiveness, this merging of technology and our social lives. And one of the things that we're doing at Josephine, as I mentioned, is feeding into the sharing economy, thinking of ways that we can share our assets or our services with others, and technology being that great connector, because all of a sudden I could reach somebody who I would have never necessarily been in contact with. So for me, it's been very impactful, because it's merging that the thing I love the most, which is human relationships and connections, and being able to make an impact, do it positively and make an impact. The potential for that is so amazingly huge. And I'm very excited to see where it goes. Right now, my attention is focused locally, which is exciting because this is a new community for me, but I am so immersed in it right now, it seems. And what a great, if you haven't been to Oakland, you should come, because it is just happening here in all sorts of ways. And I seldom make it over to San Francisco for no other reason but because I'm really digging what this town has to offer. But yeah, in the sense that the sharing economy, the potential of that seems infinite. And there's a lot of, and again, from a legal point of view, there's a lot of really interesting legalities around that I've been focusing on with the organization. And again, that validation on my former career and the tools and the uses that I'm having for it here. So whether it's policy advocacy and dealing with reforming legislation, or if it's a question of labor and employment law and what does it mean for this new era of gig workers, and such as myself as a consultant, right?
Yeah.
But just appreciating how that's all changing. And I really feel like through them, I'm very much operating on the forefront of all of these really exciting questions. So yeah, I find it's really exciting for everyone coming up now.
Lindsey, thank you so much for taking the time to talk with us today. Would you mind telling our audience where they can find some of your work?
Yeah, absolutely. You can always connect with me on LinkedIn, Lindsey Frischer, or at lfrisch, Frische, on Twitter.
Great. Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you, guys. It's been fun.
That was great. Hello, and welcome to the after show for our interview with Lindsey Frischer. It was really fun.
It was good.
Yeah, it's so great when we have the pleasure of interviewing in person. That's always a good time, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
So for me, I think what I find most interesting about the interview with Lindsey is the place where she is in her journey and in her life. Because when we asked what the biggest challenges that you faced, she was so authentic and open and honest and saying, right now is the biggest challenge I'm facing. She's like, I am in a place where I am beginning this brand new chapter in my life. And what's beautiful about it, and what my firm belief is, that she has already achieved so much success in that she took the time to reflect. She took the time to understand and honor that she wasn't being fulfilled in the career and path that she was already on. And like she said, the path that was clearly laid out for her. There's so much bravery in doing that and admitting it, and then taking the steps that she took to get where she is now. That is a lot of success. And so, to me, it feels really exciting. This is an amazing point in her journey. And I love that she shared what that experience is like, because it's different when you're reflecting in hindsight. And she's in a moment where she has learning opportunities every day, and she has challenges that come up every day, and can talk about what is it like to process that, and then come back to, but I really love the work that I'm doing, or I really love the work that I'm doing. Mm-hmm. Not even a but she just comes back to that feeling. Mm-hmm. And so for me, I just feel like that is the most exciting thing. And I'm really excited for everything that she's done, and I'm excited to see where she goes and how she, creates further this journey that she's begun.
Yeah, it's really important to take stock of making a major life transition like that, and I think honor the leap and the courage that it mm-hmm. takes to do it, because the fear of the unknown is so powerful, and I think it holds so many of us back in so many different places of our lives, because we suspect that on the other side of our fear is opportunity or hope or something amazing, but there is the security in what we know. And so I think for her, she had this job that she knew, and at the same time, she listened to herself and said, there's something more that I want and I'm seeking here. But it took that leap, and that's hard. And so And it stays hard. I think that's the other piece of it. It's not like you leap and suddenly you're free. I mean, I think you're free then of the fear, but now you're also then strapped with the challenges that lie before you and self-definition, like she talked about, not knowing, okay, I've got these multiple identities. Who am I now? How do I present myself professionally? So I think it's a lot of bravery, and it was really important when you said to me, I'd love to bring Lindsey on the podcast, and you told me a little bit about her story and her journey. I said, absolutely, because we are all works in progress, and it's important to hear from people who are still in the middle of that transition, but who have made a really courageous leap.
Yeah, and what's really unique about her is that there is a part of her that digs the unknown. Mm-hmm. Like, she digs the unknown. And so I feel like, yes, there's a fear, but I wouldn't say, like, I want to be like, yes, I also dig the unknown, because I think it's really cool that she is, attracted to that. But I wouldn't say that that's true. When I think back to the major leaps that I've taken, I think that there's some certainty that I trusted myself and I trusted my compass that it was the right decision. But I do think that after you make that major leap, yes, there are still challenges for a while. But the challenges around that, the dust settles. Mm-hmm. Like, the dust will settle around that transition. You're not going to be permanently in that transition. So once the dust settles on this major life transition, you have all this ammunition, or I don't, like a less violent phrase for that, but you have this ammunition to say, oh my gosh, look at that leap into the unknown and how well it turned out. And so then I kind of developed an excitement about the unknown, mm-hmm. because I released some of the fear around it. It seems like for Lindsey, there's some of that is natural. For me, it developed releasing that fear of unknown and being excited about the unknown, because there's a faith and there's like, I've seen it happen and I know that the dust is going to settle.
And each step of it is proving that you are strong. I think that's the other thing too, is because you look at, okay, I made that leap and I landed on my feet, or I made that leap and I kind of stumbled on the landing, but I got up and I kept going. And so I think it's like anything, the more you do it, the more confident you become in doing it. So,
yeah,
she's taken a couple major leaps in a row, and I think, you can tell she's got that inner drive, mm-hmm. which is really awesome.
Yeah, so what about you?
I connected a lot with her description of the importance of going to Asia and her journey of self-discovery. I think I have seen the transformative power of spending time outside of my comfort zone. And for so many other people, when you leave the circumstances that are familiar, when you leave your patterns and your rituals that are comfortable and secure, so much growth happens just by fact of living elsewhere, living in a different context. For me, living abroad in Ireland for a year when I was 9 and 10 years old, it was so transformative because we didn't have a car, we didn't have a television, we didn't have a washing machine, no dryer, and we didn't need any of those things to be happy. And coming from suburban America, it made me really realize that those are luxuries, and goodness, are they nice to have, especially after living in New York for a few years without a dishwasher. You sort of start to appreciate some of the appliances, but I realized, people, millions and billions of people around the world are living without these things that often in America we consider necessities, and they're happy because they know what's important. And that's not to say that poverty is great, obviously, but it's to say that really taking stock of what are luxuries and what are necessities helps put so many things in perspective. So then for me, coming back to the United States, I just felt grateful all the time. So I think sometimes de-rooting ourselves is really helpful to build up a sense of gratitude, and not in a sort of pitying comparison way. I didn't feel sorry for people living in Ireland, but it was just great. Like I felt happy to be part of that experience. And on the flip side, when I went and lived in Morocco after my sophomore year of college, I lived with a Moroccan host family in Fez, which is the old imperial city in Morocco. And it was really intense. Totally the experience of being a minority and just the emotional energy that takes. I think I've talked about that previously on the podcast a little bit, but it raised my awareness so much of the challenges that so many people go through just existing in the world. And I had the luxury of leaving that context to rejoin majority culture afterwards. But it really changed the way I look at social justice issues and the empathy I think I feel for people who are having to consciously be aware, just based on who they are, of every interaction, every social situation, just your sense of how many other people like me are in this environment. So I am a huge proponent of traveling, and I love Lindsey's description of her journey and how that helped transform her.
Yeah, what you were saying about the comfort zone and the importance of getting out of your comfort zone, and you're speaking of travel and international travel, and so was Lindsey, of a way to get out of your comfort zone, and the ways that being out of your comfort zone, I said comfort zone 12 times just then, everyone. Anyway, but getting out of that comfortable space can cause change and growth, and always does. You know, if you are willing to take those opportunities and then also allow the change that is inevitable with having those opportunities. But I also think there are many opportunities for getting out of our comfort zones every single day of our lives, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
yeah, you don't have to jump on a plane to do them.
You don't, yeah. I mean, there's so much that you can get from international travel that you couldn't get in any other experience, I'm sure. But I also think about the transformation that can occur when you get out of your comfort zone. The thing that comes to my mind is, so I am a huge introvert, meaning I am the most recharged when I am alone. I love people, and I love being around people, and I love being in crowds, but that was not always the case. And I think about a great example of getting out of my comfort zone was in undergrad. I was a part of a student organization, and we had some kind of retreat, and it was this huge retreat with like 100 students, and we were doing all of these really crazy team building activities. I don't know if you've ever done them, but they're so silly and embarrassing, and like you're in front of all of these people and you have to like throw a ball or shake your booty or something crazy, you know. But for me, that was incredibly uncomfortable. Like, I thought I was going to crawl out of my skin and die because I was so uncomfortable at that stage of my life, 19, 20 years old. People, that time frame in my life, I was so introverted, and there were a lot of other things going on emotionally, but I was so introverted that literally it made me uncomfortable to go into Subway. But I couldn't even go into Subway. Like, I would elect to go to a McDonald's or something because I didn't want to go in and have like a prolonged interaction with someone. Literally, now I'm having interviews on a podcast that people are, you know what I'm doing, videos, and it took time. And I, in part, attribute me coming out of my shell to those team building activities. Because it was the first time that I had to be incredibly vulnerable and put myself out there in front of a lot of people and see that I was okay. Like, I actually didn't crawl out of my skin. It was still intact. Everything was okay. And so when I think about how much change can happen when you get out of your comfort zone, and obviously I continued to do so, have continued to do so. Like, I became kind of addicted to getting out of my comfort zone and still am. So that's what's created that change. That's a huge, vast change.
And I think there's a great opportunity to foster that with children, with young people, as parents or as mentors in people's lives, because I think structured independence, especially kind of like you're describing, giving people safe spaces to explore these things that are uncomfortable for them is really important. I just remember I used to hate calling people I didn't know on the phone. And my parents gradually over time made me call, you know, whoever it was, if I was going to have to, someone's parents to spend the night at their house or a doctor's appointment or something. And I was super shy as a kid too. Shocking, I know, to anyone who knows me, because at this point I was like, you'll freestyle at the drop of a hat. But I was super shy, and similarly, I'm really grateful my parents gave me a fair amount of structure and encouraging me to take opportunities, because it's like anything, the more you do it, the more comfortable it gets. And like you said, now you're hosting a podcast and doing interviews on a regular basis and running workshops and coaching people. I mean, talk about not wanting to have prolonged conversations to now, like, pretty much your entire job is a series of prolonged conversations.
Yeah, and I love people so much. I do. So yeah, there's so much richness that can come from getting out of your comfort zone.
Amen to that. So, listeners, we hope you take an opportunity to jump out of your comfort zone sometime in the upcoming week. And until then, we look forward to catching you next time. That didn't make any sense. For show notes and upcoming guests, or to learn more about Coactive Coaching, the blog, and our other awesome offerings, visit motivationalmillennial.com. Keep in touch with us at facebook.com/motivationalmillennial.
We'd love to hear from you. Shoot us an email with your thoughts, comments, and suggestions at podcast@motivationalmillennial.com. And tell us who you might like to hear from, or if you think you or anyone you know would be good for the show.
The Motivational Millennial Podcast is edited by Christy Hostler and Team Podcast.
Our theme music was composed and performed by Blake Brandis.
Have a great week, Motivational Millennials!
The Motivational Millennial Podcast is supported by Motivational Millennial Coaching Services. We help you find clarity and confidence so you can take action toward living your dream life. To learn more about one-on-one personalized support from someone who believes you have a path to fulfillment and wants to help you uncover it, visit www.motivationalmillennial.com/coaching.